The Catalogue of Vanished Things. In the city where Edmund lived, the sun would rise, people would come and go, and every day something would disappear. It was an occurrence so regular it almost seemed to be dictated by some unseen cosmic timetable. But the odd thing was, whatever it was that vanished, life simply continued. One day, it was the color mauve. All things once mauve turned a dull shade of gray. The people barely batted an eyelid, simply shrugged, and carried on. Edmund, a quiet librarian, had been keeping a catalogue of all that had vanished. From whistling to wristwatches, from Tuesdays to tulips, the list was extensive and peculiar. He would wake each day with a sense of unease, wondering what would be next, and the city would obligingly offer up its daily absence. Then came the day when gravity took its leave. Edmund awoke with his bed hovering a few inches off the ground, his cat hissing from a corner where it clung, its claws embedded into the wallpaper. Outside, people and objects floated around, tethered to buildings with strings, ropes, or just grasped onto whatever they could reach. The city was suddenly an absurd tapestry of suspended reality. People scurried across walls and ceilings, finding it far more practical than floating aimlessly. Streets were vertical avenues, parks were upside-down leisure spaces, and libraries, like the one where Edmund worked, became chaotic mazes of floating books and reading patrons strapped to their chairs. A wave of collective nonchalance swept over the populace. After the initial confusion and fear, the citizens adapted, embracing the vertical life. Suits, tailored with discreet harnesses, became the city's fashion staple, and residents would walk their pets on long, retractable leashes to avoid them drifting off. Cafes served coffee in lidded cups secured with string, and children learned to play football in huge, netted arenas. But Edmund, strapped to his desk in the library with an intricate system of ropes, could not shake off a profound sense of dread. There was something fundamentally disquieting about a world where there was no up or down, where people lived unmoored, untethered from the natural laws they had always taken for granted. The levity of his city's residents seemed to him the most absurd aspect of it all. How did they carry on, he wondered, in a world where anything could be taken away, even the ground beneath their feet? He turned back to his list of disappearances, pen poised, and added gravity to the tally. Days blurred into one another, each a twin of the last with the signature of a fresh void. Post the departure of gravity, the city had mutated into a place beyond recognition, and yet life, in its peculiar, inscrutable way, carried on. Letters, laughter, and elm trees followed gravity into oblivion, yet the city adapted, reinvented, and moved on. Edmund, anchored to the remnants of his past, went about his daily rituals. He'd strap himself to his floating bed each morning, consume a diet of fluids from sealed pouches, and then, using a network of ropes, he'd navigate towards the library. Here, amidst the buoyant books and the floating furniture, he'd tether himself and begin his day's work. Routines became his lifeline, the only constant in a sea of perpetual change. Yet even the concept of routine was teetering on the edge of uncertainty. What was routine when routine itself might evaporate the next day? Then an unusual day arrived when nothing disappeared. The city buzzed with this anomaly, yet as the day rolled on, Edmund felt an invisible void. The daily inevitability of loss was missing. The strangeness of missing the missing resonated in a city where one floated freely without gravity, sipped coffee without a cup, and welcomed a Thursday that wasn't a Thursday. Now his catalogue of vanishing elements had a new, less tangible entry. Floating in the middle of a reality that no longer made sense, held to the world by a thin tether, he reflected on his catalogue. It was a list, growing, evolving, with no pattern, no reason. And then he let go. He let go of his ropes, his tethers, his last grasps at a reality long gone. He floated, he drifted beyond the borders of his city. His life was nothing more than a series of unexplained arrivals and disappearances, and he, Edmund, was just another piece in this grand puzzle. And so he merged with the endless sky, another entry in the catalogue of vanished things, another ripple in the sea of the unexplained.